stem cells, they haven't differentiated at all. 23 homologous pairs of chromosomes, they're available to any cell. It can become liver cell, can become hair cell, can become a photoreceptor, can become beta cell and make insulin. Those have not differentiated yet. These are pluripotent stem cells that can become anything. And they will become the whole fetus and the membranes that surround the fetus. Along the outside of the blastula is called a trophoblast. Trophoblast, especially right above the inner cell mass, makes enzymes like hyaluronidase that can break through the membrane, so that when this little ball, this blastocyst, comes into the uterus, the tip with the inner cell mass starts to implant itself. This releases enzymes that eats away at the cell so that that new entity, that blastula, can start implanting itself into the endometrium. The stratum functionalis that was building during the menstrual cycle. During the follicular phase of the ovary, estrogen is released. The stratum functionalis got thicker. Post-ovulation, the luteal phase produced progesterone. The stratum functionalis became more lush, more filled with glands and blood vessels. That makes it ripe for this little parasite to start burrowing into the lining and steal nutrition from the mother and give the mother its waste products. So we all start out as parasites. You go to college and you're still parasites. So anyway, you're burrowing into the endometrial lining, and that's a blastula. That outer lining will become a part of the placenta. The inner cell mass becomes the fetus and the extraembryonic membranes. The cells along the outside that are called the trophoblasts will become the chorion of the placenta. So for now, it's trophoblast cells and it's inner cell mass. If I were on the test, I don't give pictures. But if I put this here is part of the functionalis, the endometrium. This is a blastula. This is the inner cell mass. And the trophoblast started to eat away at the cells. This book calls it a syncytial trophoblast. I'm not going to be that picky. It's just that it broke down all the cell walls so you can't distinguish one trophoblastic cell from another. But it starts to advance, almost forming villi as it protrudes into the wall. Remember, the fetus doesn't develop in the lumen of the uterus, it develops in the stratum functionalis of the endometrium. So if I ask, what stage of development is this? This is a blastula or blastocyst. If I ask, what's occurring here? This is implantation. What physiological process is going on? Implantation. A blastula implants into the wall. Now, if you look at this blastula, there's a yellow portion down here called a hypoblast, and a pinker portion on the top called an epiblast. At some point, that inner cell mass distinguishes itself as two layers. And from the epiblast, they're going to form a cavity known as the amnion. And from the hypoblast, they form a cavity known as the yolk sac. hasn't quite occurred in here yet. But these are pluripotent stem cells because they haven't become ectoderm, mesoderm, or endoderm. They haven't differentiated yet. So that's week 1. And an interesting thing starts to happen a little after week 1. I don't know from where the thing comes. I form a blastula. And this is the inner cell mass. This is the chorion. Continues here where the cells aren't really distinct. The chorion then form villi. And at this stage, the gray, I think, is extraembryonic mesoderm. So this is the yolk sac forming from what was the hypoblast, and this is the amniotic sac forming from what was the epiblast. But soon after this, the mesoderm will go in between these two layers. And for the first time in a process of gastrulation, we'll have 3 different layers of germ cells. This is called a gastrula. And you can almost see that from the ectoderm, the brain is starting to form here, and this will be the spinal cord. This is the endoderm that will form our GI tract, our respiratory tract. And in the middle is the mesoderm that connects the two with connective tissue and muscle. The yolk sac, the amniotic sac, and the 3 germ layers, this is a gastrula. Now, beforehand, I would say that trophoblasts made villi, trophoblastic villi. However, when mesoderm invades this, we now develop from mesoderm blood vessels. And in these villi, we see blood vessels. Once blood vessels are in the villi, this is called a chorion. So this is chorionic villi. The exchange from a placenta involves chorionic villi on behalf of the developing embryo with a decidua on the mother. The decidua is from the stratum functionalis. Where the stratum functionalis meets the chorionic villi, that's where we have a placenta. So placentation is taking place here. But if I put this up, I can't ask that. I can point to these things and ask you, what is this? Chorionic villi. What stage of development? This is a gastrula. We see 3 germ layers. Yolk sac, amniotic sac. Let's see where we are in terms of this. So we have 3 germ layers. By the 2nd week, we have kind of a gastrula. And now that you have 3 germ layers, well, they can start to specialize. Ectoderm becomes brain, mesoderm will become muscles, cardiac muscles, skeletal muscles. Epithelial cells will form from all of those layers. So the cells begin to specialize. And once the cells begin to specialize, we form organs. So organs begin to form. This all occurs in the 1st trimester. So when you're pregnant, the 1st trimester is kind of a scarier time. Because a lot of us, and don't be discouraged, during the 1st time you carry or 2nd time, you may have a miscarriage. Sometimes that happens. You go on, next time you'll have a better luck with it. But the first trimester is the scary time, because a lot of things have to happen. The organs are developing, the placenta is taking place. Once we reach about 9 weeks, it's not quite the end of the first trimester, but it's pretty close. After 9 weeks, all the organs are in place. They're not all functioning. You know, the lungs don't function till the very end. They don't make any surfactant till late in the pregnancy. But they're there. The lungs are there. The heart is there. The kidneys are there. If you were to do a sonogram, the baby has 5 fingers and 5 toes on each foot, hopefully. After 9 weeks, we call it a fetus. So this